Good day, everyone. We're going to talk about the gut microbiome and lifestyle. Are children at risk? So this is going to be the outline of my talk today. We'll go through the World Health Organization key facts. We'll talk about the gut microbiome and its function, what causes its integrity, how it's related to health, how our lifestyle is changing our gut microbiome, and why children are at risk. So in June this year, the World Health Organization has said that obesity has tripled since 1975. And isn't it surprising to see that in spite of the global pandemic, we have 39 million children under the age of 5 who are overweight or obese in 2020. And the sad part is obesity is preventable. Why am I talking about obesity in a microbiome forum? It's because our gut microbiome and obesity are interrelated. Obesity is associated with altered gut microbial or microbiome profile because of its reduced diversity, abundance of pro-inflammatory bacteria, and reduced anti-inflammatory bacteria. Allow me to define a few terms. Microbiota will refer to the community of microorganisms. Microbiome, on the other hand, would be the collective genomes of all these microorganisms inhabiting an environment. How about the gut microbiome? It is the totality of microorganisms, bacteria, viruses, protozoans, fungi, and their collective genetic material that are present in the GIT. I borrowed that definition from molecular biologist Joshua Lederberg. Thank you, Joshua. Now, what about dysbiosis? It is defined as a reduction in your microbial diversity and a combination of loss of beneficial bacteria and a rise of the pathobionts. Therefore, increasing the gram-negative E. coli. This is a roadmap of the microorganisms in anywhere in our body. And just so we don't get lost, I'd like to bring your attention that when you read the literature, sometimes they will be referring to phyla, or what we are more familiar with are the species. So we are aware of Bacteroides fragilis, or Lactobacillus, or B. lactis, because this is what we know in the microbiome. So when you get lost, go back to this taxonomy of microorganisms. So where are the microbiota in our body? In our nose, the oral mucosa, our skin, and of course the gastrointestinal tract. And you will notice at delivery, the spectrum differs from postpartum. Postpartum, we will have almost an equivalent amount of Proteobacteria, Firmicutes, and Bacteroides. And what drives actually this gut microbial colonization? It's really the mode of delivery, whether it was cesarean or vaginal delivery, gestational age at birth, infant feeding mode, maternal diet, our environment, including our lifestyle, where we live, and host genetics. This slide seeks to show you the different times where our microbiota can actually be modified. And prenatally, the maternal health and environment, her diet, her stress level, her exposure to environmental pathogens can actually change her gut microbiota and cause a dysbiosis, which she will pass on to her in her fetus. And at birth, this fetus will have secondary factors that can affect what kind of gut microbiota he or she would have. Again, the mode of delivery and his gestational age. Prematures would have a narrower range of your gut microbiota. Other postnatal factors, whether you're breastfed or formula-fed, breastfeeding gives a wider diversity of microbiota. Where you live, rural or in a more cosmopolitan area, the rural environment is actually more friendly to your gut microbiota. Family members, siblings actually enrich a child's gut microbiota, host interactions, maternal diet, and weaning. So it is not surprising that through the years, our gut microbiota will actually change. And this is a model put forth at the frontiers of microbiology where they say that in early life, we might have very high levels of your bifidobacteria, keeping us a healthier gut microbiome, but with environmental influences, lifestyle, and stress, infections, antibiotics, we actually move towards a smaller amount of bifidobacterium in our older years. So it is not surprising that as we move through life and as our gut microbiota changes, we also are beginning to see more and more different kinds of conditions that have become the result of this changing gut microbiome. So what exactly is the function of our gut microbiome? Key to the gut microbiome is really the development of our immune system. Do you know that the intestinal tract is actually one big immune organ? And it is very vital that we keep our gut microbiome healthy because it will spell the difference between good health and bad health, because it actually protects us from pathogens. It is important for the synthesis of vitamin K and the B complexes. It's important for the promotion of intestinal angiogenesis, as well as the promotion of fat storage, the production of short-chain fatty acids from the fermentation of dietary fiber, which we can't digest, and it's also related to the central nervous system. The gut microbiome and health, how are they related? It starts with the colonization of our gut, and this healthy gut microbiomes actually programs our immune system, and through our growing years develops the intestinal tract and its associated metabolism, as I showed you earlier. So how is health maintained then? By a continuous dialogue between the host and gut microbiome. And if this dialogue is disrupted or is affected by stressors, then a dysbiosis occurs, and this causes a metabolic dysregulation that will eventually create the foundation for disease. So how does early life microbiota programming determine our future health? What have the studies and research shown in humans? They do a lot of studies in mice, but I shall not discuss them here, but focus on what they've discovered in humans. They have shown that there is such a thing as obesogenic microbiome from small studies such as this that show that there is an abundance of bifidobacteria in the 6 to 12-month-old, and this abundance actually puts positive factor in preventing obesity in the 7-year-old children. However, if a 1-month-old had a lot of Bacteroides fragilis, this 1-month-old would grow to have a higher BMI anywhere between the ages of 1 and 10. What else did they find out? That it's important to maintain a functioning intestinal barrier critical for metabolic health. And there are factors in the early microbiota that cause a disturbance, and this is what causes obesity, overweight, and child adiposity. We're talking about factors like nutrition, infection, antibiotic use, and even lifestyle. But what is the current verdict of all these researches? We do not have enough data. We still need more epidemiologic studies to make a causal link between early antibiotic use and its effect on our gut microbiota and what happens in later obesity. So what are the long-lasting effects of our modern diet, our modern lifestyle on our infant gut microbiota? One word, dysbiosis. Again, dysbiosis is a reduction in microbial diversity and a combination of the loss of beneficial bacteria and a rise of your pathobionts. The gut microbiome diversity is continually changing, be it due for an adaptation or evolutionary. And again, the factors that influence this microbiome change would be the early use of antibiotics, whether they were needed or not, whether in pregnancy or just immediately postpartum, the mode of delivery. Nowadays, many mothers prefer to go for the cesarean section, again, limiting that gut biodiversity for the infants. Infant feeding, again, breastfeeding is not very popular, unfortunately, because this can actually gift your infant with good gut microbiota. The intrauterine milieu, sedentary lifestyle, and the preference for the Western diet. In this slide, you will see that rural populations have the advantage because of their simplistic type of life. They are able to gather a more natural type of diet, rich in fruits, vegetables, fish, natural products, lack of processed foods. And because of that, their gut microbiota is preserved to maintain the microbiota that is able to digest fiber and bring its good effects on health. Compare that with those who live in the westernized world, where they have everything at their fingertips. Technology drives their lives. And because of that, even their dietary choices, their stress level is higher, causing a big change in their microbiota. And this, there is a prevalence now, or there's an abundance of the gram negatives and the bacteria that can cause disease. So in this slide, it is a summary of where the environment can actually affect the host. So even if you have a healthy pregnant mother, pre-pregnant, but if she is under stress, maybe she works, or maybe there's a lot of environmental toxogens in her plates. There's a lot of pollution. So this can actually affect her choice of diet, her lifestyle, and this kind of stress will again cause a dysbiosis. And she will pass on this dysbiosis to her child. And this infant again will be exposed to the same environmental factors, and again a modification of his or her gut microbiota, and in childhood and in adulthood. So it is not surprising why in the adulthood you now will have all this collection of non-communicable diseases brought about by environmental influences on our life. I bring forth into focus now obesity. On the left side, you will see the healthy gut microbiota, where in a lean person, a healthy person with a healthy lifestyle, probably living in the rurals, you will see there seems to be a predominance of the Bacteroides over the Firmicutes. And because of that, you have good integrity of your intestinal epithelium that is able to do all its functions for energy harvest, vitamin K and B12 synthesis, as well as your short chain fatty acid production. Most important, there is a progress in the development and the maintenance of your immune system, both your innate and your adaptive immune response stimulation, therefore ensuring a healthy life and future for this individual. Compare that with an obese or diabetic microbiota, which is actually lower in Bacteroides. And therefore, as a result of that, you have a leaky gut, which is prone to pathogen colonization, and therefore there is ineffective harvest of energy and ineffective short-chain fatty acid production. As a result, you have a metabolic endotoxemia because of the flow of your lipopolysaccharides into the systemic circulation, causing now this chronic inflammation, which becomes the root of our non-communicable diseases, diabetes included. So in a sort of short summary, we can say that the consumption of an unhealthy diet, a lifestyle-driven diet, which is high in fat and processed food, causes a metabolic endotoxemia by increasing intestinal permeability, causing the lipopolysaccharides to leak into the circulation and stimulate inflammatory pathways, putting this individual now at insulin insensitivity, putting him at risk for diabetes type 2 and cardiovascular diseases. So this is just a summary of the different studies in humans that show that the early antibiotic use actually increases the risk for obesity because it changes the gut microbiota. So can we do something about it? Research is ongoing primarily in mice and eventually in some humans. This is the use of omega-3 fatty acids, intestinal alkaline phosphatase, and prebiotics. So they propose that if you give these agents together with the antibiotics, then you can actually diminish the risk of obesity. This is a research that is very promising. It talks about the diet and the gut microbiome, how the long-term dietary patterns are associated with pro-inflammatory and anti-inflammatory features of your gut microbiome. So what are the key findings? A higher intake of your animal foods and processed foods actually causes your gut microbiome to have more inflammation, and therefore you have higher levels of your intestinal inflammatory markers. On the other hand, plant-based food diets are linked to short-chain fatty acid producers, therefore causing a microbial metabolism that is lower in pathogens. And how can we bring this study or these findings into our clinical setting? We can actually think about modulation of our gut microbiota through diets that will be high in fiber, like vegetables and legumes, and hopefully prevent the inflammatory processes at the core of many chronic diseases. 2, you can encourage whole food-based dietary patterns, which would actually increase your anti-inflammatory capacity of your nutrients by a synergistic effect with your gut microbiome. 3rd, you can provide a source of your polyunsaturated fatty acids so that you can increase the abundance of your short-chain fatty acid producers. And finally, it would be good probably to consider a plant-based diet, maybe more than an animal, maybe small amount, maybe 80% and 20%. Something to consider, because then it will decrease your intestinal inflammatory processes by targeting the microbial pathways involved. So why are children at risk for obesity and non-communicable diseases? I hope I have shown you through my earlier slides, but I'd like to review with you the transgenerational cycle of obesities and NCDs. It really starts with a healthy pre-pregnant woman. If she with a good BMI. If you have a pre-pregnant woman who is already obese, then there is already insulin resistance in that lady. So with a rapid gestational weight gain, there is a maternal dysbiosis. This dysbiosis will be passed on to the infant, and this infant dysbiosis will put this infant at risk now for all the inflammatory cytokines and all the lipogenesis, causing this infant to be already in a pre-morbid state for the non-communicable diseases. Add to that the environmental influences of formula feeding and probably antibiotic use. This is probably something more concrete. This slide wishes to show you that there is a cumulative environmental health risk that actually surrounds our children. And because of this, causes an incompleteness of their microbiome. Once the baby is born, you will see that there are many environmental factors that can cause his microbiome to be incomplete or probably very narrow, putting him at risk for the anti-inflammatory mechanisms to fight disease. So, in a way of summary, this slide points to us that our lifestyle, especially our dietary choices and our physical activity, all contribute to how our gut microbiota develops and maintains its microbiome in a healthy state. If you have an unbalanced diet, you keep to a sedentary lifestyle, no exercise, antibiotic use which is not necessary, unnecessary stress or unresolved stress, and irregular sleeping habits, these healthy adults will actually become unhealthy adults because of an ongoing subclinical inflammatory response that is causing their gut to change in its diversity and its spectra. And because of this change in gut microbiota, there is a dysbiosis that is causing this inflammation. Hence, this lifestyle actually transforms this initially healthy individual to an individual that is now going to be prone to the non-communicable diseases. So, can we do something about it? The World Health Organization seems to think so, and they feel that the microbiome is the key and has the potential to advance our sustainable developmental goals, and our target is 2030, a healthy population with diminished obesity. So with that, I'd like to say thank you very much for your kind attention, and I am ready to take your questions.